Thank you all for having me. Thank you, SailGP. Thank you, Fiona. Ever since I invested in SailGP last fall, I immersed myself into this ambitious group, and I've had many opportunities to reflect on my own life and how sailing has really played a role in it. In many ways, my journey has come full circle, and it all started with my father's love of sailing. His deep connection to this sport is deeply in my DNA. 50 years ago, my father, Paolo Grazioli-Venier, raced the first ever whitbread race around the world. He crossed the Indian Ocean, 40 days at sea, no GPS, with teammates who didn't even know if their boats could withstand the pressure. They battled horrid conditions, but my father held firm on his boat and on this dream that he couldn't really fail, and his entire fate kind of depended on it. I grew up hearing of his resilient arrival into Sydney and enormous waves that he encountered along the way. One storm actually cracked the entire egg supply that they had brought on board, leaving a rotten stench that grew over several weeks. He would recall the tension and cabin fever, the power struggles with shipmates, and the threat of death. Of course, he thought that that would be the best thing to do when he had kids and bring us into sailing, and we've been doing it ever since. But much of my childhood was spent on the water with my family, mostly with my father, who tended to put us into bad weather. And perhaps it was his roots in the whitbread race, but I get the feeling that he really enjoyed the unpredictability of it all. And while those storms were really difficult for me at a young age, I do think that they made me find comfort in the uncomfortable. This lesson would later become critical in my life, both personally and professionally, facing storms that gave me the grit to survive breast cancer at a really early age, to enter the consumer technology space 20 years ago when very few women were in that space and were doing it, to spend 9 years on the board of the Juventus Football Club as the youngest member and first woman, to start our venture fund, Muse Capital, with my business partner, Rachel Springate, a decade ago when only 7% of venture capitalists and venture capital managers are women, and less than 2% of venture capital dollars go to female-founded businesses. And most importantly, these experiences taught me that there is possibility in the impossible. And I do love to challenge the status quo. So today, Muse Capital embodies my life's work and the spirit of thriving in uncharted territories. Our mission is to use our funds to improve the way people live, care, and play, and really directing capital towards previously overlooked sectors and founders. From women's healthcare, which has the potential to unlock $1 trillion in global GDP if we achieve our goal, yet currently only receives 1% of VC dollars, to companies like SailGP tackling sustainability challenges in a for-profit context, and bringing women's sports to the forefront of all professional sports, not on a stage on its own. At Muse, we are conscious capitalists investing in a better future, and we have proven that profit and purpose can, should, and do coexist. I have long known the power of sport to drive social change. It is woven into our cultural identities, and it crosses national boundaries, generations, and political divides. It is why I invest in the sports ecosystem, and why, more specifically, I became an investor in SailGP. It really is an extension of myself and my values. SailGP's commitment to sustainability, diversity, and youth will drive commercial success and cultural impact for years to come. These values will continue to make SailGP not only an important driver of change across our society, but will also make SailGP one of the most successful businesses in professional sport. Mark my words. Truly. Thank you to you, Fiona, for championing that. They're lucky to have you. Sustainability and diversity are inherently linked. I happen to be an environmental biology major with a minor in climatology back at my university days 20 years ago at Barnard College, actually, here in the city. And one of the first things that I learned is that diversity is nature's stable state, and it is critical to sustaining a thriving ecosystem. Put simply, nature hates sameness. if we look at environments, whether it be forest, plains, or on the ocean floor, biodiversity is more than just a beautiful backdrop. It's a strategy and a form of defense. For example, man-made monocultures that arose from industrial production of food quickly became vulnerable to threats like pests and disease. Similarly, uniformal crops were highly susceptible to drought and soil depletion. Nature has taught us that diversity is critical for survival and for growth. And yet society has done a really great disservice to ourselves over centuries by denying this really simple truth. And in the same way that diversity is critical for the environmental health, diversity is an important ingredient in business and commercial success. Diverse teams breed growth. Diversity of capital, diversity of participation, diversity of investment, diversity of ideas. And SailGP's commitment to diversity is truly revolutionizing the world of professional sport, putting both men and women on the same boat and truly, finally, showing us what real equality looks like and feels like. Just think about that for a minute. Men and women competing on the same boat at the same time for the same positions on the same team. I get chills. They're out there really harnessing the dueling powers of technology and Mother Nature aboard the beast of the machines of these F-50s that we've all seen together in athleticism and in power. This is the example of gender equality that SailGP sets, and one that we hope many will follow. I have known for many years the power of women's sports, and I am pleased to see the market catching up and making women's sports one of the hottest asset classes today. Women's sports are now recognized as a massive business opportunity, and SailGP is positioned to capture this lucrative audience worldwide. Data shows that women's sports fans watch games longer on average than men's sports, engage in storytelling content outside of competition at higher rates than their male counterparts, and form a community growing at a rate 40% higher than general global sports fans. This power is evident if you look at the success of Hannah Mills, for example, and the inspiration that she is to so many young girls. In making men and women equal crewmates, SailGP taps into this lucrative fan base, which will further accelerate the league's commercial success. When I started Juventus Women in 2016, there was no money in women's soccer. People thought I was wasting my time. But I saw it as an underfunded sector that was really waiting for a chance. It is why I invested in Washington Spirit, the NWSL team, that has now seen a tenfold increase in market since it's starting to catch up. It's why I invested in Just Women's Sports, an innovative media company that is highlighting elite athletes and their stories. It's why I invested in Sports Innovation Lab, a fan intelligence and data company, because after all, the ability to quantify, measure, and track success is critical to commercial success for teams, leagues, and our sponsor partners. It's also why I invested in Disrupt the Game, a representation agency for elite female athletes driving the future of sport. We have made significant progress in recognizing women's sports over the last decade, but there is still a long way to go. And in many respects, the market still views women and men's sports as two separate categories. But this is just simply not the case. I am excited by SailGP's innovative approach to elite competition for all athletes. This is really diversity in action, and I know it will drive profit and impact. So as we embrace diversity, I want to highlight actually one overlooked aspect of championing gender equality in athletics, and that is women's health care. I think it's time that everyone recognizes that female bodies move differently than men's. If you can believe it, and this is a relatively new concept, it's kind of wild, women were actually excluded from clinical trials until 1993. Excluded from clinical trials till 1993. Which is troublesome, but also shows just how much opportunity we have in front of us as investors and brands and partners. If we are to support our female athletes and their ability to perform at the highest level, we must support and invest in women's health care. We're excited to help SailGP be leaders in this space, and we know from past experience the impact of these efforts. Growing the women's healthcare ecosystem has been a key pillar of my career, from developing J Medical at Juventus to leading early-stage investments at Muse Capital in all categories of women's health, from fertility to hormone health to menopause and so much more. We've seen how supporting women enhances performance in sports and beyond. We've seen how entire categories can grow when women are given the tools to perform at their best, both on and off the water. Finally, SailGP's commitment to sustainability and diversity will also impact sport and culture for the next generation. The INSPIRE program integrates these critical lessons and cultivates lifelong love of sailing, just like my father taught me so many moons ago. This program will ensure that athletes grow up with boys and girls on the same playing field, in the same boat, and eventually in the same boardroom. My involvement in SailGP has been a natural extension of my family's history on the water. And as I watch those high-octane, adrenaline-inducing, technologically beautiful F-50s flying across the water, I am reminded that this is not my father's sailing. We are harnessing the power of historic sport and using its storied past to make a better, more innovative future. Thank you, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Oh my days, I love that. And coming from such a personal story, Assia, such a personal route, to give us that journey, that was absolutely epic. Thank you so much. And to have our first change maker, first female change maker ever at Champions for Change, couldn't have picked a better one.